So this is a typical switcher. This one's a bit more elaborate than the one that is featured in the book, but you can still operate it using the same basic techniques. We're also showing you at the top of the screen representations of the program and preview monitors. So those will show you the appropriate content depending on what we do with the switcher, as you'll see. Right now, both of those monitors are black signal. As discussed in the book, we have these rows of buttons that are called buses or banks. Each bus has a series of buttons that represent the different inputs. Each input connected to the switcher has its own button on each bank. So in other words, every input that comes into this switcher has its own button on each of these banks. So for example, you can see that we have several camera inputs here, and we also have other device inputs. We also have a black button that selects a black signal, and we have a color bars button that represents color bars. The most important bus is the program bus. And the program bus is this middle bus right here. And it is actually what determines what is going to go out over the air. For example, right now we have black signal selected. And so on the program monitor at the top of your screen, you are seeing black signal. But if I select camera 1, we now see camera 1 on the program line. And by the same token, if I press camera 2 on the program line, we see camera 2. So we will return to black signal momentarily. So if we only use the program bus, our main bus, the only kind of transition we can do is a cut. And a cut, as you will recall, is basically an instantaneous transition from one shot to the next. If we want to do any other kind of transition, say for example a dissolve, then we need to introduce the preview bus. And the preview bus is this bus below the program bus, which is going to allow us to select an input that we can see in the studio on the preview monitor, but it won't actually go out over the air. So if you look at your preview monitor right now, you'll see that we have black input selected, but I could also select camera 1, or I could select camera 2, or I could select color bars. And in each of those cases, you'll see that the output of the preview monitor changes. However, the program line did not change. So again, the value of this is that it allows us in the studio to see different shots and different effects without actually putting them over the air. We also have associated with the preview and program bus the fader bar. So when I move the fader bar, it's going to take whatever input is on the preview bus and put it on the program bus. As a demonstration, let's say that I want to do a fade in from black. Right now I have black selected on both the program and the preview buses. What I want to do is fade in from black onto camera 1. So what I'm going to do is select camera 1 on the preview bus, and I still have black selected on the program bus. So on our monitors right now, on the preview monitor, you're seeing camera 1, but on the program monitor, you are seeing black. However, you'll see that if I slowly move the fader bar from one end to the other, what essentially happens is we do a fade in from black to camera 1. Camera 1 is now on the air on the program bus, and now black is on the preview bus. So what happens is when we move the fader bar, the inputs on the preview and program buses flip-flop. As you can see, as I go back and forth with the fader bar here, you're seeing that what is happening is that each time I do that, the inputs on the preview and program bus essentially are flip-flopping. So I am dissolving to and from black and camera 1. As the book discusses, it's important to note that the position of the fader bar doesn't actually correspond to the program or preview bus specifically. what happens is when you move the fader bar from one end to the other, it replaces whatever was on the program bus with what is on the preview bus. The speed at which you move the fader bar determines the speed, the length actually, of the transition. So we can also do a cut from what is on the preview bus to what is on the program bus by using the cut button, which is over here by the fader bar. So right now I have camera 1 on the program bus and camera 2 on the preview bus, and you can see that if I press the cut button, it essentially flip-flops those two, and now we have camera 2 on the program bus, camera 1 on the preview bus. And if I press it again, it once again flip-flops, and we now have camera 1 on the program bus, camera 2 on the preview bus. Similarly, at the end of the show, if I wanted to do a fade to black, I would once again select black on the preview bus, and then I would move my fader bar, which is basically going to fade us to black. We can also do a superimposition, which is essentially one shot partially faded onto another shot. So for example, if I select camera 1 on the program bus, camera 2 on the preview bus, and then if I move the fader bar halfway, you can see that what we have now is camera 1's shot superimposed over camera 2. And then I can just move it the rest of the way, and we now move to camera 2. We can also perform, using the fader bar and the program and preview bus, other types of transitions such as wipes. We have a series of buttons over here by the fader bar. We have so far been selecting the mix button, which is a dissolve from one shot to the other, but we also have these wipes up here as well. So for example, if I want to do a wipe, I can select this wipe button, and then if I move the fader bar, you can see that we are wiping from camera 2 to camera 1 in this case. I can also do this type of wipe, and it is basically the same type of technique that we use when we are doing the dissolves. Another effect we might want to do is a key, where we show some lettering or a graphic over our picture. So we have a graphics generator here, which I will put on the preview bus so that you can see. And right now we have a lower third graphic that could be used to identify anchors on a news show. And what I want to do is key that over the video, in this case over the video from channel 1. So if I did this just doing the technique we used a little bit ago, where I just sort of move the fader bar halfway, actually we need to switch back to mix there. If I move the fader bar halfway with a dissolve, you can see that that kind of works in superimposing the letters over the video, but what is happening here is it doesn't really look crisp, because what is essentially happening there is we're basically dissolving or fading back both video sources, and we end up with something that really doesn't look as crisp as it should. For example, you can see that my camera shot there from camera 1 has sort of like faded, and it's not as bright as it should be. So if I just take this back, the better way to do this is by using the switcher's key function. And this switcher, like many switchers, has a downstream keyer, which means that it puts in the key after all of the other effects on the switcher. And on this particular switcher, I have two different choices. I can either do a downstream key cut, which looks like that, or I can do, if I take that out, I can do a downstream key fade, which fades the key in and out. So both of these are allowing us to end up with a graphic or other kind of source keyed over a main camera source. Okay, I've reset the switcher to all black inputs just to show you this next feature. The Mix Effects bus, which is actually up here, is basically going to allow us to do more advanced special effects. As an example of this, let's say that I wanted to set up a split screen between camera 1 and camera 2. We could do that using the program and preview bus by selecting camera 1 on the program bus, selecting camera 2 on the preview bus, selecting a wipe for our transition type, and then moving the fader bar to about the halfway position. And that gives us a split screen effect, but the problem with what we just did was that everything I just showed you would have gone out over the air. So we would have had this whole awkward thing where we would have had the one shot up, and then we see us setting up the wipe, and then we end up with the finished product. And what we would rather do is end up with just the finished product without having to basically show the audience us setting up the effect. And the Mix Effects bus is going to allow us to do that. So I'm just going to return everything to black momentarily. And what we're going to do in this case is we're actually going to set up the effect using the Mix Effects bus, but we're not going to show it on the air until we're ready to take it. So to make this happen, what we're going to do is on the preview monitor, I'm going to press the Mix Effects input, and that's going to allow us to see what we're doing on the Mix Effects bus. But it's not going to go out over the air. So what I'm going to do is on the Mix Effects bus, I'm going to select camera 1 on the middle bus, camera 2 on the bottom bus, and then I'm going to use my Mix Effects fader to actually move to the halfway transition. And what this is going to allow us to do is we now have the effect set up on the preview monitor, but it hasn't gone out over the air. To actually put it out over the air, since I do have the Mix Effects bus on my preview monitor, I can simply press the cut key and it will put the effect on the air. So again, the value of that is that it allowed us to basically set up the effect before we actually put it out on the air. So there you have an overview of the basic operation of a video switcher. As always, for more information, check out your video production textbook.